Well, you're up fast.
Okay, yeah. So far, the only ones I don't see are Jones and Simon.
Okay, we'll give them a couple of minutes.
And I
Hey,
think
it's Cheryl. Did you count me?
I see you, Miss Cheryl. Yep, gotcha.
All right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I haven't called
I'm-
the roll yet. I'm just getting the pre-Zoom census here.
Okay. Okay.
We are live, however, so.
And John, our
Okay.
board chair, was planning on coming on to say hello and give a welcome. He had two conflicts he was trying to work out, so he may be on.
I'm sorry, who was that, David?
This was John Pinney, who's our board chair.
Oh, okay. Okay, still Jones and Stevens. Or not Stevens, I'm sorry, Simon, I don't see.
Okay, well, we'll wait a couple more minutes. Then we're going to have to move on.
Cheryl Stevens is here.
Yes, Simon. Ms. Simon, I'm waiting for.
Okay.
Greg, with your warnings that you give on executive session, do you ever have to warn us about taking Zoom calls while we're driving? Because I've done that once, and I just wonder whether or not that's an admission against interest to be driving and doing a Zoomer.
I'm going to leave that between you and your Secretary of State.
Okay.
We'll have that conversation offline.
All right, so I see Ms. Simon is here, so
Okay.
I just have
Well-
not seen Mr. Jones.
All right, well, we'll wait one more minute.
Zuma just got kicked out. He's logging back in now, Gene.
Okay. Just glad Joe and I got my issue straightened out with Zoom after many, many, many attempts,
Boy,
but we did it.
that terrifies me. All right, Gene, I guess we're going to go ahead. The Cuyahoga County Council Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, October the 27th, 2020 will convene. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Calling the roll, Ms. Conwell?
Here.
Mr. Jones? Mr. Jones is absent at the moment. Ms. Brown?
Here.
Ms. Stevens?
Present.
Ms. Simon?
Here.
Ms. Baker?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Tuma? All right, we'll come back to him. Mr. Gallagher?
Sure.
Mr. Schron?
Here.
Council President Brady?
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, I guess we'll, Councilman Tuma was on earlier, so I guess he's trying to get hooked back up. Is there any public comment, Madam Clerk?
There is no public comment for this meeting, Mr. President.
All right. Well, our fourth item is a presentation by David Gilbert, President and Chief Executive Officer for Destination Cleveland and Greater Cleveland Sports Commission. The Destination Cleveland is required to report to the council once a year on their use of the bed tax. And we have Mr. Gilbert here. So David, welcome, and wish we were meeting you in person, but that's not to be our fate. So go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and to everybody. It's good to see a lot of friendly faces here. As I mentioned, if it's okay, I'd love to just have our Destination Cleveland's board chair, John Pinney, kick off with a welcome before the presentation. Also, Gene, I want to ask, are you going to share the presentation, or should I do it from my computer?
You should do it from yours.
You got it.
Mhm.
All right, Mr. Penny?
You are muted. There you go.
John, are you on? I see him, but
Yeah, he's not muted. I also see that Mr. Tuma is back with us.
well, I guess in the meantime, I'm gonna share my screen, and if it's okay, let me just get this here. Can you all see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I hopefully if John hears, he can jump in, and I'll make sure I get this done in a short order and leave some time for Q&A. Chairman mentioned, we have an obligation to provide an annual update to council, but we really see it as not that. As you know, we have such a partnership in so many ways with the county that this is really more about not an obligation, but something that we like to do and look forward to feedback, because we have touch points many times throughout the year beside this. And certainly where we're at right now with COVID, we're at a particularly relevant time, a particularly difficult time for the travel and tourism industry, both in the short term and long term. But quite frankly, there is some really good news in what we wanted to report. And really three things, just we're going to go over, dividing into what we do and why it matters, current impact of COVID, and then our plans for recovery and regrowth. And I think one thing that's important, interestingly, just today, we announced our all of our statistics as it relates to the travel and tourism industry for 2019. We end up through research getting those late summer, early fall each year. And we actually wasn't meant to coincide with this day, but it's good that it did turn out that way. At the end of the day, I'll talk about we continue to have a significant growth industry, and for Destination Cleveland, as many of you know, I think most of you know, we're a nonprofit organization. We have been around for I think about 85 years. Peer and like organizations all over the country that we compete with on behalf of the community, and really three things that we do if you boil it down. Our job is to change the perceptions of Cleveland, attract people to Cleveland, and enhance experiences in Cleveland. And ultimately, it's about money. I mean, that is why we exist. For every dollar spent, that we bring a lot more than that back in short term and long term into Cuyahoga County. And our the research that we just got back was very good news. Certainly about 2019. We had a 9th year in a row where the growth, our number one metric is numbers of visits to Cuyahoga County for leisure travel, business travel, and convention meeting travel. We just had not only the 9th straight year of growth, but that growth for nine years in a row has beat the national average. And every one of those years but one beat the state average. We set 5 years ago a lofty goal of getting to 20 million visits a year by 2020, certainly on track for that until COVID hit. And you see that corresponding growth in the dollars related to that. Tourism spending, economic impact, and so on. And I think what was very important to us is not just the amount of growth, but the fact that the growth is higher than the rest of the country. And one other thing interesting, I just heard from an economist today. In the past 10 years, overall employment in America has grown 16%. Overall employment in Northeast Ohio is 9% during the same time. Yet overall employment in travel and tourism in the leisure sector is up 22%. This is an important and growth industry. And here you see just some graphs showing the growth. And the one on the left here shows our percentage growth each year in the dark red, with the light red being the rest of the country. How we're funded, as you know, it's a mix of different hotel occupancy taxes that are largely governed by the state and implemented by the county. It's sliced and diced in a lot of ways, but it provides about 90% of our funding. And like I mentioned, it's how every one of our peer organizations, large and small, across the country are funded. And when we look at each year funding our funding as it relates to our peers around the region, we really look at how do we stack up against Detroit, Columbus, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Louisville, Nashville, the set that are our regional peer sets. We're probably at about the 60th percentile in overall funding. This is how we spend our money. In 2019, the funding that we spend is about $18.5 million. And that's after money for the Gateway Debt Rock Hall inductions, arena transformation, the dollars to collect and distribute, and so on. And we spend about 68% directly on marketing and sales. And then certainly others, destination development, which is experience development, our partnerships program, and less than 10% on administration of the organization. And here's what it means to the county. We have research that shows it for our marketing. When we do marketing campaigns, the last campaigns that we've measured directly, for every dollar we spend, $195 is spent in Cuyahoga County by people traveling from the outside to Cuyahoga County. Now, that doesn't mean that the county itself, they get the taxes related to that. But it's an ROI that is, it shows very effective spending on how we market, on our brand, our effectiveness. It's a very high number within our industry. At the end of the day, what we know is that the dollars that are spent by those 19.6 million visits to Cuyahoga County last year, and if you account for about $1,150 in taxes for every Cuyahoga County household. Obviously, this has been an incredible year for all of us. I would say that it's very clear nationally and here in Cleveland, the travel and tourism industry has been hit harder than any other industry. And yet we've been dealing with it. We know that prior to COVID, we were on track for some very lofty goals, and felt good about our plans moving forward. Obviously, COVID said otherwise, and these are some. I'm not going to read these, but some statistics that just show nationally and locally how difficult this pandemic has been to our industry. And you think about travel and tourism, it's about experiences. At the end of the day, that's what we sell. We sell experiences. And the vast majority of experiences provided for visitors are in small business. If you look at yes, you do have the big museums and sports and major events, which are critical, but so many are in small businesses, and they're certainly being hit the hardest. We're looking at for 2020 a loss of visitation, probably somewhere in the 60% range, with a slightly larger than that percentage of loss of visitor spending. Right now, just the meetings and conventions that have had to cancel, we've calculated through our National Industry Association a loss of impact in the county of well in excess of $100 million. And certainly we've seen it in our funding. Our revenue will, at the end of the year, be down somewhere around 55%. We've made significant cuts that we made in early March. We've furloughed and laid off well over a third of our staff, and we're still making it through. We've we've remained positive and really done everything we can to figure out how we maximize the impact we can have on the county, regardless of what we're able to bring in. And I'd say through this crisis, the very first thing we did back in March was we created a temporary new mission for the organization. We realized that so much of what we do wasn't relevant. We couldn't, when we had to make significant cuts, and you have to think back in April, our revenue was cut by about 85%. So, you can't survive, quite frankly, not just operate, but can't survive without major changes. And we really had to look at what we were doing. The relevance of it was not the same. We weren't marketing Cleveland to outside people. We weren't booking meetings and conventions. We weren't servicing meetings and conventions. But we looked through a different lens of these 5 things, which really helped us get some clear thinking around how we survived the early days of the crisis. And in the end, a lot of good things happened. While we were losing a lot of meetings and conventions, we were able to save 66 to date meetings and conventions that were already scheduled that canceled, getting them to book for future years. That became our priority. And a vast majority of those, 80%, included the Hilton in the Room block, and 16 of those were groups at the Huntington Convention Center that we regroup for future years, giving us a much better pipeline in what we did. Also spending a great deal of time, and this was a good time for us, really looking, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, about efforts related to systemic racism and racial equity and inclusion within the context of everything that we do. We launched, as all of you know, our Clean Committed program in concert with the county. This has been very significant for us. We've had over 700 businesses in the county that have signed up to commit to the guidelines that were created alongside County Health Department, but with Metro Health, Cleveland Clinic, and University Hospitals, and the city's Department of Health. This list of growing businesses, and it grows every week, is being used by thousands of people to help choose where they are going to go when in feeling, if they're going to be out in a social situation and interacting with their community, how can they be most safe? We funded and created 280,000 clean kits. We've distributed at this point nearly 180,000 of those for free to those businesses, and through County Council and Cleveland City Council to get them in, and through every municipality in Cuyahoga County to get them in places of need. We've continued to market, be it on a much smaller budget, really concentrating first on locals. Working, that's not really what we do, but in this case, we pivoted, getting locals back out to re-engage with their community and spend. And we did just start a first small campaign, Roam the Land, that we are spending some dollars, very targeted through social media and other advertising, to people in Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania who've indicated a propensity to travel for day trips and short overnight trips. And then finally, just want to talk a little bit about our recovery and our regrowth. What we did was, once we've got through the first 90, 120 days of the crisis, and felt like we had steadied the ship in the organization, we brought in a national firm who's really considered the best think tank within our industry nationally. And they helped facilitate a process for us with a lot of our board, our leadership staff, to really look at what should our priorities be over the next 12 to 15 months. What we really see as the next stage of hopefully getting through the back end of COVID and back onto our feet. Where should we refocus our limited dollars? Where should we refocus our efforts? And it really ended up being on these 5 issues. And I'm not going to go into, I can answer anything you want in the questions, but it's really helped us decide what we say yes to, what we say no to, what staff we maintained and what staff we have not. And it really is about, it's being about more nimble. It is making sure that when we are out of this, we've retained as much of our travel and tourism experiences as possible. We have to think about the long term. We have to think about how we come out of this, but we also have to think in the short term, and partnering with the county or Downtown Cleveland Alliance or Cleveland Neighborhood Progress or the city or others. how do we try and help save as many of these small businesses as possible in our industry so that when we come out of this, they're still there. We know we're going to lose a lot of them, but we're going to do everything we can and are doing everything we can to try and minimize that loss. We know that our revenue next year will be far less than this year. We're looking at a budget price somewhere around $12 million next year, where it would have been closer to 19 this year, and we've made the adjustments to do that. And we've looked at, within, what are we going to do with our dollars this year, and how are we going to best spend them for this year? And lastly, what I wanted to really end with is, there's a lot of really positive things. One thing we know is that this crisis we're in is not a Cleveland problem. It's not a Cuyahoga County problem. It's a national problem. And I think so oftentimes the problems we look at are problems that we may be having that may be greater than others. And in this case, that is absolutely not the case. Well, every one of our peer sets around the country are thinking through the same things. How are they going to come out of this? And we are starting from a place of strength. We are starting from an industry that has grown significantly over the last 10 years, creating a lot of dollars, a lot of jobs. And we believe we've been a very good steward of that industry and helping that growth. And we also know that we have some fantastic things ahead. If you look at this, with next year, the NFL draft, and these are just some of the big things: NBA All-Star Game, Women's Final Four, ASAE, which is really the Super Bowl of meetings. It's thousands of meeting planners from around the country who book lots of business after they come here. And just last week, the Sports Commission, who is a separate organization, but the county through Economic Development Department has been a wonderful supporter of. Just last week, the Sports Commission announced 8 new national championships being secured for Cleveland, NCAA championships for 2024, 5, and 6, including NCAA basketball, NCAA wrestling. Right there in one day, securing over $27 million in new business for this region. There are a lot of reasons to be optimistic, and knowing that we absolutely will be back. And I guess the last thing I'll close with before opening up to any questions, and this is just something I heard on a panel this morning that it really stuck with me how this was put. I was on a panel with about 150 of our partners talking about our metrics, and we had a gentleman by the name of Adam Sachs, who's considered probably the top tourism economist in the country, runs something called Tourism Economics. And he said, I get asked a lot about what we think people will look back and remember 2020, remember COVID as it relates to travel and tourism. And he said, my answer is gratitude. He said, I think people are going to look back and be grateful once they feel comfortable traveling again, of how much they appreciate spending time with their friends and family, how much they appreciate travel, how much they appreciate home after they've been traveling. And for whatever it's worth, that really stuck with me, that I think it's a really beautiful way to look at a silver lining out of all this. And I think a way that we are going to choose to look at how we view our comeback, and not looking back on the difficult times. That's easy to do, but looking back on the opportunities that it created for us. So anyway, I'll just stop there. John, I know I don't know if you can hear me.
No, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I don't know if you have anything.
I apologize. Yeah, I had some speaker issues. I apologize to council and the staff. But I'm John Penny. I'm the chair of Destination Cleveland's board. I just want to say a few words. First of all, thank you for all your support, and thank you for your leadership through a very difficult 2020. As David mentioned, we have a very active and engaged board of 35 community leaders. We immediately took steps to implement austerity measures to make the necessary cuts in light of what we were facing. We discharge our duties very seriously. We're terrific stewards of the funds of the organization. From a budgeting standpoint and from a forecasting standpoint, we're actually managing that process with staff's full support, actually out of our finance committee. And it's a dynamic interaction between the board and the staff, and David, under David's leadership, we're all on the same page with the goal that we, first of all, preserve the organization, preserve capital, do what we can to support the community in the interim during these challenging times, but be prepared to come out of it with not only funds and capital available, but with a plan and a strategy so that we can come out of it stronger than any other community. So at the board level, regular meetings, regular interaction, strategy sessions. David and I and other board members just met the other day in a socially distanced way, but it was good to get into a room and to think about what things are going to be like in our industry when we come out of this, and we will. It's going to be a challenging fall and winter, but we have a plan. We're working on more plans and more strategy, and we're all engaged, and we have a terrific group of 35 volunteers who care a lot about the community. And as a final note, I just want to say that it's been an incredibly challenging time for everyone, but I do believe that Cuyahoga County under this leadership, as well as the city of Cleveland, has managed a very difficult period of time. We're very happy with, in the context of how challenging this is across the globe and the country, we're pleased with how things have played out so far. And we're hoping to make it through the fall and the winter and come out of this in the spring with a lot of upside and opportunity, starting with the draft and some other amazing events. But we're very focused and determined to make sure that we're discharging our duties and being great stewards of the funds. And this organization is really going to be primed to come out of the pandemic in a strong way. So thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure David can answer even better than I can. So thank you all.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Gilbert, and thank you, Mr. Penny. We will now take questions from members of council. We'll be moving into executive committee pretty soon, but we appreciate very much the presentation today, and we'll open it up to questions now if there are any.
David, is the NFL draft scheduled for 2021? Is that going to be live or is it going to be virtual at this point in time?
Thanks, Jack. Right now, the plan is for a live event. We are literally meeting with the NFL multiple times a week. Here's what I will say. So right now, a few things. It is being planned as a large live event, but I'd say large is relative. It's not going to be what's being planned now is not going to be what we all saw in Nashville, which was literally 100,000 people every day, elbow to elbow. But the site that is being planned is a very large footprint across most of the downtown lakefront, which allows for a lot of social distancing. And it's a free event, but time ticketing and so on. But again, the caveat is COVID will really dictate what happens. We still believe that even in a socially distanced way, we'll still, if it is allowed to be a live event, and it's not till April 29, 30 and May 1, so we still have about 6 months. Will still be a very significant event for Cleveland and all of Northeast Ohio. I mean, just the NFL alone, between what they plan, the media, their workers, takes up almost every downtown hotel without a fan coming in. So obviously, it's very different if it needs to be like Nashville or like Las Vegas last year as a full virtual event. I really wouldn't consider that a draft in Cleveland, but we are still very hopeful that we are going to have a live draft in Cleveland, and that'll include the tens of millions of people who watch on top of those who are here.
When do they have to make the call on that?
We really don't know. I mean, it's probably, if there are any changes, it certainly won't be until sometime early next year. Because I think we don't know what COVID's going to be. I mean, they're planning as if COVID were then like it is now. Obviously, not knowing exactly what Ohio parameters are. I think there's also going to be a lot of similarities between the Super Bowl and how they're planning there and the draft. So I think a lot of seeing what happens at the Super Bowl with the full Super Bowl experience being planned in a similar distanced way. So but it would be certainly sometime first quarter if there's going to be any changes, but we're planning for a live event, that's for sure.
Thank you, Jack. Are there any other questions from the council?
I have one question, if I may.
Yes, Ann, go ahead.
I know that you said you thought the revenues would be down for 2021, and optimistically, I think we're all hoping that there will be a vaccine by April and implemented in April, May, June of next year, and will considerably drop the fear that's existing out there now. Is some of your reluctancy of revenues being down due to the economy, that, we've lost a lot of businesses, people are just getting back on their feet, a lot of loans to pay back? What is your reason for hopefully given a better scenario next year than this year?
Yeah, it's a very good question. We've taken from a number of things. I mean, first and foremost, we've been working with a lot of national economists and looking at what they're predicting for the industry, and we're looking at next year. So if this year total revenues, what we look at is revenues generated by hotel stays. The number of stays, it's a combination of occupancy and rate. And this year will probably be down somewhere, probably if you look at 19 levels, probably about 45% of levels 19. We're looking at next year, probably more like 65%. So quite frankly, considerably up from 19, or from between 20 into 21. Most economists are saying that the recovery we'll see is largely in the second half of 21. And most economists are saying that in the travel and tourism industry, a full recovery measured by total revenues equaling that of 2019 will probably be in early 24. And it's really a factor of two things, meaning lagging. One is just the fact that we were in a recession. So when you look at any recession we've had, the past several, it's been usually 2 to 3 years to come out of it. Also taking into account just the psychology, even with a vaccine, of some people may take longer, just like the airlines after 9/11. There was just a psychology of some people not to want to be in a socially contacting environment. I think the key for us is, if it's nationally first half of 24, we want to be out of it sooner. I mean, that's our goal. That's one. And two, how do we get the curve in a shape that we are much closer to 80, 90% of the way back by the time we hit 2023, that even if we haven't hit it, that we're much closer. So we're actually pretty optimistic about where we think we're going to be.
All right, I appreciate that. And, considering that we were not in a recession and we weren't leaning towards a recession, it was all about the virus. So, the differences of coming out of the recession from past history and coming out of this slowdown in the economy could be different. You could see a different resurgence because we weren't recovering before that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And in fact, I saw a chart today that, it was a chart of consumer spending and consumer confidence. And actually consumer confidence is higher than spending, which leads to think that when that people have some money in their pocket, and when they feel comfortable, they are going to start spending. So, we want to be, there's something called the Smith Travel Report, STR, some of you may know, and it's really sort of an industry benchmark of looking at past and predicting the future in the travel and tourism industry. And we decided for our budgeting for next year to take what they are predicting and use 90% of that. We decided we want to be a little more conservative because, we had saved for a rainy day and it poured and still is. So we'll have less in our rainy day fund. So we want to be a little more conservative, but the hope is that you're exactly right. And we'd rather budget a little more conservative. And if we get every month from you all the bed tax reports, and if we're ahead of that prediction, we're going to spend. We're going to do everything we can to boost people coming here.
Thank you. Thank you for your good work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. We appreciate you guys coming in. The council is going to have to move on to, with our agenda. So thank you very much.
Thank you all for the time. Appreciate it and everything you do.
We appreciate everything you do as well.
Take
All right.
care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I would just like to acknowledge that Councilmember Joan has joined the meeting during that particular presentation.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. The next item is executive session. And so all meetings of Cuyahoga County Council are open to the public under Ohio open meeting laws. Under that law, council may go into executive session during a meeting for authorized purposes. During executive session, council confers outside the hearing of the public. Council may not make any decisions about any matters in executive session. All decisions are made in public. This afternoon, the council will go into executive session to discuss pending or imminent litigation. During this time, council members will go off screen and return once the executive session has ended. Is there a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing pending or imminent litigation?
So moved, Simon.
Second, Brown.
Thank you. Will the clerk call the roll?
Okay.
You're muted, Gene.
Moving to executive session, Ms. Conwell? Mr. Jones?
Muted too.
Mr. Jones? Okay, Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens? Ms. Stevens? Ms. Simon? Ms. Simon? Ms. Baker?
Yes. And I did get a note that it says I'm invited to the breakout room. They may have joined before they.
Yeah, I think it was done a little prematurely. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Tuma?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Strawn?
Yes.
And Council President Brady?
Yes.
Motion carries. If the other council members, Jones and Stevens, are already in the room, we'll make an assumption that they voted yes.
Okay. The ayes have it, and we'll adjourn for the meeting for the executive session. So I'll see you on the other side.
Hey, Gene, just let me know when to put the sign up.
Okay, I would say right now is probably good. So Andrea, at this point in time, we have to mute and take our video off, and then you'll be able to see the sign. Okay? Andrea, just go take your mouse to the lower left-hand corner of the screen and click on where it says start video. There you go.
are we gonna need to log out and log back in?
Yes. As soon as the council president finalizes this meeting, then this meeting will close. Mr. Brady, you're on mute.
Are we back in the
Yes.
committee of the whole now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we are reconvening the council meeting, are now back on the record. If there is no miscellaneous business, we will adjourn the committee of the whole and return with the council's regular meeting for today.
Everyone just needs to find the link for